All right, so you ready to get a little ruthless today?
Uh-oh, ruthless how?
Well, in a strategic way, of course. We're diving into Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Less self-help, more like, what, a power playbook?
Exactly. It's like, forget being nice. Let's talk about how influence really works, even the, kind of cutthroat parts.
I'm picking up what you're putting down. It's about understanding the mechanics of power, even the stuff we don't always like to admit exists.
Right. Like, we've all been in situations where we felt powerless, right? Green gives us these, like, almost Machiavellian strategies to, flip the script.
And not necessarily to become some power-hungry tyrants, but to at least understand the game being played around us.
Exactly. So we can protect ourselves and maybe level up our own influence a little.
Awareness is everything.
100%. And speaking of awareness, Green kicks things off with a big one. Guard your reputation with your life. Law number 5.
It's foundational, right? It's not just about being likable. It's about cultivating an aura of strength, of being untouchable.
So it's like projecting an image of power, even if maybe you don't always feel that way internally.
It's about shaping perception.
hmm
Green says a strong reputation is more powerful than any weapon, but a single crack can make you incredibly vulnerable.
That makes sense. So how do you even start to build that kind of like impenetrable reputation? What's step one?
Well, it's a mix of cultivation and strategy. You need to control the narrative around you. One example Green uses is P.T. Barnum.
The circus.
Yeah, exotic dancer, but also a spy. Her power was all about mystique, keeping people guessing.
Okay, so don't be a robot, but don't be completely random either. Where's the line between like intriguing and totally untrustworthy?
That's the art of it, right? Green says overuse unpredictability and it loses its power. Sometimes a predictable pattern can actually lull people into a false sense of security.
So then when you DO act unpredictably, it has more impact.
You get it. It's all about calculation.
This is getting kind of sneaky.
Oh, we're just getting started. Green takes it even further with Law 20, which is all about indirect action.
So this is where we get Machiavellian, right? Like House of Cards level stuff.
Basically, it's the idea that being the puppet master is more effective than being the puppet.
Meaning you're influencing things from behind the scenes.
True power is often invisible. You're guiding people toward your desired outcome without them even realizing it.
Okay, I gotta ask, example. Give me a good example of this in action.
Green talks about Cesar Borgia. He was notorious for using other people's ambitions to get what he wanted. Like he once set this elaborate trap for his rivals.
Oh man, this is like next level chess.
Exactly.
Right.
He was a master manipulator, but also a brilliant strategist. And that's what Green wants us to understand.
So it's not just about like being cunning, it's about having a deep understanding of like human nature, what makes people tick.
You got it. And that's what makes this so fascinating, right?
Hmm.
It's like a crash course in both strategy and psychology.
Definitely starting to see how all this ties together. It can be a little intimidating though, right? Like, are we all just pawns in some elaborate power game?
That's the question Green forces us to confront. But remember, knowledge is power.
Right, knowing the rules of the game, even if they're a little ruthless, gives you a better chance of playing it well, or at least not getting played yourself.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about reputation being strategically unpredictable, even a little about manipulation. But Green doesn't shy away from the more, let's say, human elements of power.
All right, like envy. He actually dedicates a whole section to it.
Which makes sense, right? Envy is everywhere. It's like this underlying current in so many interactions.
And it's powerful.
Hmm.
Green argues that instead of just trying to deal with envy, we can actually use it to our advantage.
Okay, hold on. How do you spin something as negative as envy into like a power move? That feels kind of Machiavellian, even for this conversation.
Well, think about it. When someone envies you, it means you have something they want.
Yeah.
That gives you a certain leverage, right?
Okay, so the envy itself is like information. It tells you what the other person values, what they aspire to.
Exactly. And once you understand that, you can use it strategically.
But like, how do you actually play that? Do you flaunt it, downplay it? What's the move?
Green cautions against outright flaunting. That just breeds resentment, which can lead to sabotage. Not exactly a winning strategy.
So subtlety is key. You want them to know you have what they want, but not in a way that makes them want to, like, take you down.
Exactly. You want to make them feel on par with you, even while maintaining your advantage. He uses Cosimo de' Medici as an example.
The super wealthy Italian banker.
Yeah, from Florence. He had incredible wealth, but he kept his displays of it surprisingly low-key.
Interesting. So no, like, solid gold carriages or anything?
Not quite. He understood that true power isn't about ostentatious displays. It's about cultivating an aura of, well, power.
So it's almost like by not bragging about it, he made people even more curious, more intrigued.
Precisely. And less likely to resent his success because he wasn't rubbing it in their faces.
Okay, that's pretty clever, actually. It's like,
Ugh.
it's not bragging if it's true, but with a Machiavellian spin, you let your accomplishments speak for themselves.
Exactly. It ties into this idea of choosing your battles wisely, which is Law 19. Know who you're dealing with.
So it's not enough to be smart, you also need to be, like, strategically empathetic.
Exactly. You need to understand other people's motivations, what makes them tick, but also their potential threats.
Okay, I like where this is going. Tell me more about those threats.
Well, Greene talks about different personality types you might encounter in this game of power. Like, for instance, he calls one the serpent with a long memory.
Uh-oh. That sounds ominous. What do they do?
They might not react in the moment, but they hold a grudge. They'll meticulously plan their revenge, wait for the perfect moment to strike.
Yikes. So how do you deal with someone like that? Avoid them at all costs.
Greene lays out two options, both pretty intense.
Yeah.
One is to crush them completely, leave no room for future retaliation.
Wow, okay. Scorched earth.
Or you remove them from your sphere of influence entirely. Basically, don't underestimate the power of a well-nourished grudge.
Duly noted. But how do you even know what type of person you're dealing with in the first place?
Observation. Pay attention to behavior patterns, how they treat others, their past actions. Greene says most people are open books if you know how to read them.
So it's like, know your audience, but with a slightly more cunning edge. Which makes me think about another theme that runs through a lot of Greene's laws, and that's deception.
Oh, absolutely. He addresses it in several laws, but Law 18 is a big one. Keep others in suspended terror. Cultivate an air of unpredictability.
Wait, didn't we already talk about that one?
We touched on it, but there's more to it. It's not just about surprising people. It's about using that unpredictability to maintain control.
Okay, so how does that work? By keeping people on edge all the time.
Think of someone like Louis XIV, the Sun King.
Yeah.
He was a master of this.
The French Q.
Yeah. He created this elaborate system of court rituals, etiquette, and he would give these vague answers to requests.
So people were always on edge trying to figure out what he wanted.
Exactly. He kept them in a constant state of anxious anticipation, so busy trying to please him that they didn't even think about opposing him.
It's like he weaponized their own ambition, right? Their desire to, like, climb the social ladder.
Exactly. And it worked.
Yeah.
But it also highlights how these power dynamics play out in all areas of life.
Right. This isn't just kings and queens. It's in our jobs, relationships, even families, right?
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
And sometimes the most powerful move you can make is saying no, which can be tough. We're often conditioned to be agreeable.
Yeah, I can see how that could backfire, though. Always saying yes can make you seem, I don't know, less powerful.
Greene dedicates Law 12 to this. Use selective honesty and generosity to disarm your victim.
Victim seems a little intense.
Well, you know, Greene can be a bit dramatic. He's not saying everyone's out to get you. But it's about being cautious with those who are a little too eager to please, too quick to say yes.
Because it probably means they want something from you.
Exactly. It often means there's an ulterior motive at play.
Okay, I'm definitely seeing some real-world applications here.
He uses the example of Count Lustig, this con artist, who used small acts of honesty to essentially mask much larger deceptions.
It's like that give a mouse a cookie thing, but with much higher stakes.
Exactly. You gain someone's trust with a small act, then leverage that trust later on.
Okay, this is a lot to process. Greene's really making me rethink, like, every interaction I've ever had.
It's about awareness, not paranoia.
Right, right. But you bring up a good point. Sometimes maybe it's better to just, like, refuse the cookie altogether.
It can be the most strategic move.
So when we're the ones asking for something, how do we do it effectively without being, like, manipulative or needy? Greene has to have some thoughts on this. So we've talked about how to kind of strategically navigate requests, but what about when you're the one on the receiving end? How do you make sure you get what you want without, resorting to begging or, like, playing games?
It's all about framing. Greene talks about this in Law 13. When asking for help, appeal to people's self-interest, never to their mercy or gratitude.
Okay, so no sob stories. Got it.
Exactly. Appealing to someone's emotions might work sometimes, but Greene argues that people are far more likely to help if you can show them how it benefits them directly.
makes sense. We're all a little self-interested, right? So how do you actually like frame a request that way? Like what's the magic formula?
There's no one-size-fits-all formula, but it starts with understanding the other person. What are their goals? What are they trying to achieve?
And then you find a way to like align your request with their goals.
You got it.
Yeah.
Greene uses Benjamin Franklin as an example. The story goes that he wanted to win over this rival legislator.
Okay. Classic power play.
Right. But instead of showering him with flattery or trying to appeal to a sense of duty, Franklin just asked to borrow a book.
Wait, seriously.
That's it.
A rare book from the legislator's personal library. It was a small gesture, but it worked like a charm.
Because it appealed to the legislator's ego.
Exactly. The legislator felt respected, admired even. It created a bond between them.
So it's like find that common ground, that shared interest, and leverage it. Make them feel good about helping you because it also makes them feel good about themselves. You got it. It's way more effective than relying on guilt or pity, and it builds a stronger foundation for future interactions.
So much of this is about playing the long game, isn't it? Which reminds me of another one of Greene's laws. Law 29, plan all the way to the end.
Ah, yes. This one is crucial. Greene argues that most people fail because they get too caught up in the moment. They don't think about the long-term consequences of their actions.
It's like that saying, short-term wins, long-term losses, or something like that.
Exactly. He contrasts this with someone like Otto von Bismarck.
The Iron Chancellor, wasn't he, like, instrumental in unifying Germany?
Exactly. He was known for his incredible long-term planning. Like, he'd set goals decades in advance.
Okay, that's next level.
And he was meticulous about it. He'd anticipate obstacles, have backup plans ready, the whole 9 yards.
That sounds exhausting, to be honest.
It takes work, no doubt. But Bismarck understood that power is a marathon, not a sprint. He was incredibly patient, willing to wait for the right opportunity rather than rushing in and risking, unintended consequences.
So patience and strategy. But doesn't that kind of contradict another one of Greene's laws? The one about boldness.
Law 28, enter action with boldness. You think so, right? But it's not about being one or the other. It's about finding the balance.
Okay, so how do you know when to be bold? What does that even look like in, like, real life?
It's about recognizing those moments when the odds are in your favor, when it's the right time to take a calculated risk. Greene talks about Vasco Núñez de Balboa.
Vaguely rings a bell. Remind me.
He's the explorer credited with discovering the Pacific Ocean.
Oh, right. Yeah, you don't make discoveries like that by playing it safe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He was ambitious, not afraid to go against the grain, challenge the status quo, and it paid off, but it also made him vulnerable.
High risk, high reward.
Greene argues that there's also a psychological advantage to boldness. When you're bold, you project confidence, you intimidate your rivals.
People start to see you as a force to be reckoned with.
Exactly. But it's important to remember that boldness without strategy is just recklessness.
Right, you need both. It's
Right.
like you can't just barge into a room and expect everyone to bow down. You need to know who's in the room, what they want, and how you can use that to your advantage.
Now you're getting it.
It's a lot to take in. This whole conversation has been like a masterclass in power dynamics, and honestly, little overwhelming.
It can be a lot, especially if you try to apply every single law all the time.
Right. Like, are we just supposed to be scheming 24/7?
Greene isn't advocating for us to become like power-hungry manipulators. It's about awareness. It's about understanding the forces at play so you can navigate them more effectively, whether it's in your career, your relationships, your life in general.
It's like knowledge is power, but only if you know how to use it.
Exactly.
Well, you, dear listener, hopefully you're walking away from this deep dive not necessarily wanting to, like, conquer the world.
Though a little ambition never hurt anyone.
True. But at least with a better understanding of this whole power game we're all playing, whether we realize it or not. Remember, you have more power than you think, and awareness is your greatest asset.